Hi, this is Mr. Max. This is part of two of my series on histograms. Okay, so I'm going to go directly to the questions. So here you have got a group of children from a certain school. They were asked how much money they had saved, and the histogram and the table below here shows the result here. So you've got the histogram here, completed histogram, then you have got a table here, but now you have got missing values of P, Q, and R, which we need to calculate. Okay, right, so let us do the solution to this particular question. So when we have the first group, and we also know that the frequency is 25, and what I did is I took an excerpt from that first sort of rectangle there in our histogram. So what we know is that this area should be 25. That's the frequency, because the frequency is equal to the area of the rectangle. So if this is 25, then I can actually definitely calculate the length here. All right, so that should be that length times the breadth of 20. All right, should give me 25. So that means the length should be 1.25. So if that is the case and the length is 1.25, then I look at my grid. How many little blocks do I have in between here? And I will see I have got 5 blocks. And if I divide 1.25 by 5, each small square or grid represents 0.25. So add 0.25 to 0.25, you get 0.5. Add 0.25 to 0.5, you get 0.75, and so on. All right. So now I know what does one little square represent. So if I know that, I can definitely find those missing values. All right, so let me just bring back my table. Okay, so what we're looking for is the value of P. Now it's very easy then to find the value of P, which is 20, because you take that, because remember it's between 20 to 30, you take that 10, which is what I have here, and then you multiply 8 blocks here, if you count them, times what one little block represents, which is 0.25. Do the same for the other one. Between 30 and 40, it's 10 as well. If you multiply 10 times 0.25, because you've got 4 blocks there, that is the frequency density, times 10 should give you that 10. And here the frequency density, which is 0.25 times 2, and you multiply that by 30, and that gives me 15. Right, so second question says a doctor's patients are grouped by age, and as you can see, between the ages of 0 and 10, there are 300, 10 to 30, there are 600, and so on, 60 and 100. There are 880, quite a lot, and there's a missing one here. All right, so we also have a histogram that is not complete that we probably will be asked to complete. Right, so we are supposed then to complete this particular sentence here. With 1 square centimeter, what does it represent? Now remember that between 0 and 10 from our table, this is 300 people. All right, so the area of the rectangle, if it's 3, then it should be very easy for us if we say 1 square centimeter is 100. It's 1 centimeter times 1 centimeter, because of 3 of them is 300. Then it should be that 300 divided by 3. All right, so what I did is, if you look at this particular blocks here, this here is the square that I am referring to. This is the square that I have 100 here. Okay, because we know 1 centimeter is 10 years in the age part. So 10 times what will give me this 100, or I know that the whole one here is 300, so 300 divided by 3. Okay, so that means 100 for each one. Okay, another thing you can also do is I take the frequency density, and I know to calculate the frequency density, so I'll refer you back to your table here. All right, the frequency density is the frequency, which is 300, and I divide that by 10. And once I did that, I know that I have 30. So effectively, the 30 is there. All right, so if the 30 is there, then in order for me to determine what does one little square represent, I divide 30 by 3. And when I did that, I know that one little square represents 10. And if I know this is 10, and the area is proportional to the frequency, then this little square represents 100 people. Okay. Right, so there is also a second part to this question, and the question says, or it instructs us to use the histogram to find the value of A. So let me bring that table back here. So in order for us to find the value of A, which was this value here, remember, to find frequency, you now need to multiply the frequency density times the class width. So between 30 and 60, it's essentially asking us to find the area of this rectangle here, which has to be 40 here. So that is 40 because all the way up to there is 30. So it must be 40. Then you multiply that by the class width here, and the class width here, 60 minus 30, is 30. So that's going to give us an area of 1200, which is then also the frequency for that particular answer. Now they are saying we are supposed to draw the missing two rectangles. So remember, I first had to find what does little small square represent, because I know that this is 10 from here, that is 20, that is 30, and that is 40, for example. So I want to know what does one small little block represent, and obviously we realize that one small block represents 0.2. All right, and also if I bring my table back, so what I did on my table is I then calculated the frequency density. So the first one is known, the second one is between 10 and 30. The frequency density is 30. So I'm going to calculate and show you how to find the frequency density. So you take the frequency of 600, you divide it by 20, you get 30. Next one, you take the frequency, obviously down, if you can complete that rectangle, it's going to fit exactly like that. The third one has been done, the one of the 1200, divide that by 30, you get 40. So that one is fine. The last one, if you have to calculate, is 880 here, and I divide it by 40. It's frequency divided by class width. That's going to give me the frequency density, which is 22. So I can identify, first of all, where's 22? It's one little block up from 10. Or up from 20, so that's 10, 20. So obviously that is going to be how my histogram looks like. Right, we have the third question. It says the mass of each baby born in a hospital during 1 week is recorded. The results for the babies whose mass is between 2 kilogram and 4 kilogram are shown in the histogram. So it shows us between 2 and 4. This is the mass of the baby. We have got the frequency density here between 5, 10, 15, and 20. So what is clear is that one little block here represents 1 unit, because 5 divided by 5 will give me 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay, and we're going to have some questions. Right, so the first question is we're supposed to complete the frequency table. So if I bring that table here, so we want to know between 2 and 3. So we know between 2 and 3, the frequency is 10. And we can actually see that frequency is 10. Now between 3 and 3.5, the frequency is 20. Okay, you don't have to, between 3 and 3.5, the frequency there is 10. And the way you find that frequency is you take the class width, which is 0.5 here, times obviously 12. Okay, 0.5 times, so in this particular case, times 20. Okay, if you just have to go back, is the one in red. So 0.5 times 20, that is the area of this rectangle. The next one is going to be the same class of 0.5 here, that is between 3.5 and 4. Then multiply that by 12, if you look one little block there, and we know that it's 6. So we now have the frequency of 10 and 6. So we have completed the table. So now they are saying 8 babies were born with a mass such that between 4 and 6, All right, 8 babies. So we have to complete. So let me just bring in that table. It says between 4 and 6, 8 babies was completed. So what you need to do is you need to find the frequency density. All right, so to find the frequency density, you take the 8, the frequency, you divide it by the class width. The class width is 6 minus 4. That is the class width, which is 2. And I know I've got 4. So all the way up to there is where I expect that rectangle to be. So you can't complete the histogram without calculating the frequency density. So once you have the class interval that you can find by subtracting 6 minus 4, which is 2, divide that into the frequency, that gives you the frequency density, and now you can complete the histogram. Right, so the few questions I'm going to do is how to find a constant involved when working out the frequency density. So finding the constant, let us look at a particular question. So this question says this table shows information about the times t taken by 80 of the girls to complete a mathematics test for the examination. Right, so if you take any value on the histogram, the height of the column for the interval between 60 and 80, they are saying now the height is 2.8 of the column. Right, so we need to find the heights of the other 3 columns. Now, we are not drawing this histogram. So what we know is that frequency density is calculated by taking the frequency, dividing it by the class width. So if you take the frequency here, 14, and you divide it by a class width of 20, that is 80 minus 60, you get 0.7. Essentially, that's 0.7. All right? This does not give you 2.8. So we must find what constant is multiplied by 0.7 to give you that 2.8. And in order for us to find that constant, we say 2.8 divided by the 0.7, and we know it's 4. So the constant that is involved is going to be, we take the frequency density and we multiply it by 4. Each time the frequency density of this and that particular column and that column, and then we are going to be able to calculate the heights of the different columns. Okay, so let's bring the table back, and let's also bring the class back that we have. So if you take between 40 and 60, the frequency density here is 5 divided by 20, 20 being the class interval, times the 4, which is the constant we're looking for, so 1 centimeter. That will be the height of that. Between 80 and 120, that one is already established. 80 and 120, well, you take 29 divided by 40, 40 being the class interval, 120 minus 80, that is the class width, times the 4. That height of that column is going to be 2.9 centimeters. And between 120 and 150, if you take the class interval there, or the frequency density, you take 32 by 30, 30 being 150 minus 120, times the 4. You get about 4.3 centimeters. And that is how you approach that particular question. I'm going to do one more question on an examination type question, so you can see how it's asked also in exams. Okay, so we have a histogram here, and as you can see, it's completed. We've got time and then the frequency density. A group of 100 learners will ask how many minutes each spent talking on their mobile devices. The histogram gives a summary of that information. Then you're supposed to use the histogram to find the number of learners spent between 0 and 10. That is the first rectangle here. Remember, the way to find it is the area. The area of this rectangle will be 10 times. Now, very important that you know, one little block here. Now, between 0 and 1, there is 10. So one little block represents 0.1. That is 10 into 1. So each little block represents 0.1. All right. So 0.1.2, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. So that is about 1.5. So the area then of this rectangle, okay, is nothing but 1.5 times 10. And when you multiply 1.5 times 10, that should give you 15. All right, so make sure that at least you understand that particular part. So then 15 learners spend between 0 and 10 minutes talking on their devices. Okay, let's bring that histogram back, because the second part, it says between 20 and 90 minutes. That's all the way from here to here. So you can do it in 2 parts. You can find between 20 and 60, the area of that. So it's going to be 60 minus, it's 40. 60 minus 20, that's 40 times. Well, this is 0.6 if you count, okay? 40 times 0.6 is 24. And then if you take the 90 minus 6, that's 30 times, that's 1.2. So 30 times 1.2 is 36. So this little rectangle here is 36. And this one here is 24. So when you sum that up, you should get the total number of learners, which is 60 learners spent between 20 minutes and 90 minutes talking on their phones. Right, so John wants to draw a pie chart to represent the information in the histogram, but now there's only one particular one that we're interested in. That is, you're supposed to calculate the sector angle between 0 and 10. So that is, remember, we have got 100 learners here, and 15 out of the 100 learners, all right, represents this between 0 and 10. 15 out of 100 learners, it's the first rectangle. Multiply that simply by 360 degrees, you get 54 degrees, and that is the correct answer for this part.